Welcome to the Crickelectuals podcast, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today, we'll be talking about Pakistan cricket, and I'm your host, Jay.
And this is Rufan. Me and Jay were longtime friends. We've known each other for 23 years, and this is really a byproduct of our long-winded conversation over the years. And we've had these deep discussions, and we always wish we had recorded those, not because they were very profound in nature, but just because we wanted to have other parties join in and give their opinion. We're big cricket fans, reporting from United States. We've been here over 24 years, and we thought it was a great initiative to put something in recording, get everybody's opinion on it, and hopefully make something big out of this. So we asked you guys to go ahead and like and support our podcast. It would be a better date to start after a momentous occasion, right? But that's not the reality. We have a big elephant to address, and which is New Zealand leaving Pakistan based on a threat that is still not disclosed what it was. Jay, what are your initial thoughts when you heard the news?
I'm 100% with you, man. I wish our first episode could have started with Pakistan has won the T20 World Cup, but unfortunately, the way things go in,
yeah,
exactly the way things go in cricket, every day there's a new kind of weird news coming out of Pakistan or some other part of the world. So my first reaction to the New Zealand team pulling out, and I use that word intentionally because it feels like pulling out. It doesn't feel like the threat was so credible and so evident that they would share it with everyone. They didn't share what the threat was. So that makes me think that perhaps a conversation or some additional support systems that could have been put in place could have allowed the games to go on. And unfortunately, it sounds like none of that happened. And it just sounded really hasty at the very last minute to have to pull the game out. I'm just crushed, man, heartbroken. I was hoping for this game to go on. New Zealand hadn't been in the country over 10 years, and it was really going to be a big event for both Pakistan and world cricket. You were about to have one of the bigger players that had been absent in the home game arena to come back and offer something special. Pakistan crowd, Pakistan environment is something really unique and special. And unfortunately, this hasty decision is going to rob and has robbed the audience of a great show.
Yeah, feeling was mutual here, man. It was a renewed emotional distress that we had back in 2009. And I'm going to be honest, man, I was a bit ignorant, and I wasn't even thinking about any threats. And I remember a few years back when Zimbabwe came back home in Lahore, and I was looking at the crowd. I was paying close attention. I was scared, man. What if something happens and cricket, slips away from Pakistan again? But this time, man, this is a different Pakistan. I was very comfortable. I was just looking forward to the toss and get the series going. I did not expect this. This was completely unexpected. I completely agree. We need more explanation to what happened, right? So to recap what went down, they were in Pakistan, right? They were practicing for 5 days. And this is when the security levels are much lower than what it would have been on the day of the match, right?
Right.
So you got the crowd, you got the stadium, you got people coming in randomly, because I've been to a practice match in Pakistan, right? There's not great amount of police stopping you.
Oftentimes there are fans that could take pictures and stuff with the
Right.
athletes.
Right. So they're totally comfortable with that. They're playing for 5 days. Toss happens, right? And there's a great threat. So let's just establish that the severity of the threat was high, right? The way they pulled out. It wasn't 5 of our guys have explosive diarrhea or something like that, right? And they don't want to turn colors of their trousers on live TV because they're black Kiwis, not yellow. It's not that. It's beyond. So it's a great threat that you have to pull everybody out. So let's talk about the threat. You had your team investigate the security of Pakistan, right? And this is not just police officers standing there. You have ISI, you have army involved, you have government involved, you have private security agencies there. And I think police, there were like 4,000 bodies there on the day of the match, right? So you got presidential treatment. And cricket is not even the biggest sport in your country, and each player is getting that type of treatment, right? So you leave, right? You decide that there's a threat. Talking about threat, no one ever guaranteed there won't be any threat. It was how we tackled the threat is what we made monumental progress in security. So threats are going to be there. So it's got to be a great threat, like a meteor is visible coming down, that you had to pull out that quick, right? It could have been discussed. You could have pulled your team aside, go back to the hotel room.
Yeah, you could have delayed the match for a bit.
Right, and talk about it, what happened. No. Okay, they leave. Rude, right? To say the least.
Right, to say the
You
least.
left. We get it. These are your citizens. You want to protect them first. Okay, so what's the threat? We can't disclose that. Really? We are sitting ducks here now.
Right.
As hosts, we're taking care of you, providing you with great hospitality and security. You're just going to tell us now we're going to die here? What is going on? Are you not going to share the threat with us and let us know so we can protect ourselves? So there's definitely something not right, man. Some political pull or whatever it is. And I reserve the right, to change my opinion, but give me a good explanation and we will discuss it, But as it stands, none of this makes sense. And it's very sad to the crowd, to the supporting staff, man. There were companies dedicated to cricket of Pakistan that went bankrupt and out of business back in 2009. Some of them probably moved on. Some people came back and they were excited. They started something new just to serve the Pakistani cricket and the staff. Where do they go now? They're people who were, flying from overseas to attend this match. There's no response and there's no compensation, nothing. And it's just very ignorant in my opinion.
Yeah, well, no compensation yet. Let's see where that goes, and we'll discuss in a moment what we think might be the way forward. I also feel, just to double down on the point you're making, the nature of this threat, whatever the threat may be, it is understandable that if there is a threat, that you want to protect your citizens as soon as possible. Every moment is precious and you don't want to just wait around and undermine its significance. So I can understand that. But it had to be a threat then of the nature where, the government is toppled, there's a revolution starting or something, something like that. If that's happening and the country is starting to get into, some sort of chaos is breaking out, then it's understandable that you had to get your people out as soon as possible. But the embassy is still there. There are still other New Zealand citizens that are in Pakistan. There are some New Zealand citizens that are part of the Pakistani coaching staff. I think there's a gentleman who trains the coaches in the National Academy in Pakistan. So he's a New Zealander. So, there are other citizens involved. So really, they just took the team quickly out and it just didn't make sense. And then not describing this threat is really very difficult to comprehend and to give any credit to New Zealand. I really always respected New Zealand and felt like they were one of those nations that always had a positive message of tolerance and unity and the unification of humanity. And the way they dealt with some of their internal terrorist attacks was commendable. But then this kind of situation just seems so uncalled for. And I'm wondering how much of this has to do with the evolving situation in Afghanistan. And if that's the case, if that were a factor, even then, it just requires a dialogue between the security agencies. And the security agencies that New Zealand works with apparently is I read a little bit more about it and heard some retired Pakistani cricketers talk on YouTube about this. They were saying that there's a 5-member security team that always evaluates these venues. Australia, the United States, the UK, New Zealand is one of them, I believe. And then there's one other English-speaking country I'm forgetting the name of at the moment, but it's these 5 countries that kind of assess the security situation in a country, and they then make a judgment about how things are and whether or not it's safe to go. Apparently, initially, that team said it was good enough, and New Zealanders came and they stayed and practiced for a while, and apparently the government then sent an urgent message for the team to return because they had increased the security rating of Pakistan in a way that requires the team to return. So it seems complicated. So to me, it does seem like there's something that's going on in the region that increased the risk in the region overall, and maybe Pakistan ended up paying the price for that. Either way, I'm just guessing right now because and we have to guess because they left us no choice. I mean, when you leave a gap in information, people are going to fill in the gap with lots of rumors, lots of hypotheses, and that's all we can do because we have incomplete information. So I'm looking forward to the days to come when we hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's already 24 hours too late to provide an explanation because it's going to be fabricated by this time. And that's what we're going to think. Really, it took them time to come up with a good excuse. Like you said, there's 5 English-speaking nations, right, that look into the security that cleared it. It's a process. If they went through the same process that they did 5 days ago, whenever they did it, the last assessment, it doesn't happen in 5 minutes. You
Sure.
stop the play, then you reanalyze, and it takes at least a few hours to determine if the threat is that great that we need to pull out a whole team. And like you said, man, very ironic to expect something from New Zealand's progressive government,
Yeah.
and it's not fair to the people of New Zealand because not everybody's involved. Whatever happened,
Yeah.
initially the New Zealand cricket said it was a government's decision.
Right.
But the Prime Minister of New Zealand said, we support New Zealand's cricket's decision. So they weren't even on the same page.
Nope.
So they left us nothing with controversial thoughts. And we're going to point fingers. People are going to be blamed. And the best thing they could have done is provide an explanation within hours on the same day at least.
Right. Right. And that didn't happen. Now that leaves opportunity for conspiracy theories and all kinds of stuff. So it's really a poorly managed and poorly handled situation to not involve the primary country that is providing you the security that you are requiring, to not explain to those authorities what threats are on the horizon or whatever you believe is really very, to me, it feels very irresponsible. And I wonder, to take the conversation forward from this, I wonder if this would have happened if Pakistan was in New Zealand or somewhere else. Like what would have happened or what would have been expected if the Pakistani team or the Bangladeshi team or the West Indies were in New Zealand and something occurred in New Zealand that was a threat? What would have happened?
Nothing would have happened. That already happened in Christchurch, right? Because we have already assessed the security. Threats come and go, right? But the vicinity of where you're playing, how strong the security is around it, it's already been confirmed is safe. So you move on, depending on what type of situation or threat it is, whether it's at the stadium nearby, or take the example of Christchurch, right? It happened in a mosque. You can probably call off the match in respect of the people who died, right? That's a different story. But the security threat was never a concern because even a third world country like Bangladesh or Pakistan had a team with great expertise to assess the situation there, right? And they already cleared it. So they were not scared. And New Zealand didn't really respond to the security levels of any sports that was going on during that week. It wasn't a concern.
In fact, Bangladesh was there. That's why I brought up Bangladesh.
They were in the mosque.
Yeah,
they were praying.
They were in the mosque within a kilometer of where that incident took place. So they were praying and they returned, and their cricket board did not, fly them back immediately as if all of New Zealand was crumbling down. Here, though, the response is completely different. I mean, it's, in a way you could say that Board of Cricket in Bangladesh, they trusted the New Zealand authorities to be able to provide the protection they promised to their athletes. And in essence, here, Pakistan has made the same promise. They have made the promise to New Zealand that your team will be provided the best possible security in the world that we provide to every single head of state that ever visits. And New Zealand did not trust that. You demonstrated that you have zero trust in a member nation, an ICC member nation's ability to provide and secure cricket games, which is embarrassing.
It is. And not to mention, this is a country that's dealt with a lot of terrorist attacks, right? So naturally, the security evolves around it. So our security is probably 100 times better than what New Zealand has because they haven't
Right.
experienced any of that. So to judge, a government or security efforts based on you're just a third world country is just ridiculous to me. I think it would have been a better outcome to just set aside, take your team back to the hotel and have a briefing on it. And if they're going back, just explain it to us, right? What's going on? And if the threat is so great that it can't be discussed, fine. Just tell us in time. We will release details. But at the moment, New Zealand playing Pakistan was a greater threat. So calling the match off took the threat away. There has to be some time set aside, and there's an explanation. You talk to PCB at least, right? There's professionals on the ground. There's umpires. There are commentators from New Zealand who have no idea what happened, and then you pull your team out only. They're sitting ducks too. They want to know what's going on. I think the only thing that could have been done is just delay the match or call off the first one day, explain the situation, and then move forward. So
I
we
agree
have
with you.
clarity at least.
I think they did have a few options. One of the options is what we've already discussed, which is what you just restated, to delay. The other option is they could have canceled the game. And another option could have been if the security threat, once they had created and started a dialogue about the security threat and what needs to be done for them to feel that that threat will be neutralized and the game could go on, they could have also moved the game to another venue. I know that takes a lot of effort probably, but these games were to be already played in multiple venues. It was a long series of several ODIs and T20s. So there were other available venues, arguably, that the game could have been shifted to if they were to be deemed more secure. But once again, that requires a dialogue, a conversation that seems to not have been done. But the point I'm trying to make is if people in New Zealand really wanted this to work out, if they really had best of intentions, they could have figured out a solution. But unfortunately, to me, it feels like they made up their mind so quickly and did not care about any of the consequences that this decision of theirs brings, both on this tournament, this particular series, but also just cricket in Pakistan overall.
That is true, and it's a privilege on top of that to be New Zealand to call off something like that. There's so many consequences. If Pakistan calls something off, what happens? Is it a forfeit? Do you lose points? Are you gonna get fired from the team itself if you pull a move like that, right? Even if it's PCB, you have to come back and deal with your government. But they were not concerned about any of that. So they had that much power. They could have just called off and moved on, and they did it with no consequences. It's insanity.
It's slightly related to this. It might have something to do with this whole situation, but did you hear about the DRS controversy in Pakistan, that they didn't have the DRS system available?
I heard about that, but I didn't know there were some legal cricket rules associated with that. So some of the terms don't apply if you don't have that. I wasn't aware of that. So I didn't know how important it was.
Yeah, so they kind of downgraded this series so that it wouldn't count toward the rankings. Wow. And so basically this became like a bilateral series with no consequence toward your ranking. And
yeah,
maybe this, there should be some kind of consequence for abandoning a series like this. But since this series was already downgraded, they probably can't even do that to kind of make a statement to New Zealand about, not doing things like this in the future again. So, to me, I don't know what the natural consequences is, but I was wondering if this was related, like did New Zealand feel like they could just quickly drop this series because it doesn't have a consequence anyway. It doesn't matter. Even if they played the series, they wouldn't get anything out of it. So I wonder if that impacted how quickly they made that decision.
I mean, it was a great threat, right? So either way, it would have to be. I don't think they're concerned about ICC. They have bigger problems to deal with, political issues, right? So I think points are irrelevant at this time, and rankings are irrelevant. There's a lot of unhappy people, parties, and they have to deal with that. So, Jay, what do you think? What are the next steps? What should Pakistan do, and how is it going to impact Pakistan cricket at home going forward?
Yeah, I feel it's bad news clearly because it sounds like England may also reconsider their series that was supposed to come after this New Zealand series. So now
Yeah,
we have an issue there, and once again, that 4-member team that decides the security or assesses the security in a country that includes England and New Zealand and Australia and whatnot, and it's the same people that are going to be deciding. Why would they decide anything different for England team, right? Like it's probably going to be the same decision. And in fact, I mean, I would think now they would be even more cautious about approving the security
to begin with. Yeah,
to begin with, right? They're not going to want to send Team England and then call them back
it's the same
because of the
embarrassment.
backlash. Yeah, because there's too much backlash. So I think they'll be even more conservative in giving the green light for Team England. So clearly Pakistan is going to end up having, I feel, a long stretch of very limited cricketing activity, and that's not good, especially leading into the World Cup. These T20s especially were going to be really crucial for them because they were finally getting to play teams of a higher caliber. Pakistan hasn't played strong opposition in a long time. I just feel like the wins that we've gotten in the past year and a half have really been inconsequential. They really are not significant in my book. I don't feel like there's much to be proud of there because of the kind of opposition we played, So these teams were finally going to be decent teams, decent oppositions. And so I think it hurts and harms Pakistan a little bit. But on the good side, T20 World Cup is happening in Dubai where Pakistan tends to perform really well. So that should still go well. What do you think?
I think a slight disagreement on who we played, because if you look at it, what we are unpredictable, right? What we don't get to play cricket at home. Uh, let's look at the World Cup, right? The last one in England. You had two teams that made it to the finals, England and New Zealand. They both lost one match each to Pakistan. So on a good day, doesn't matter how big the team is, and doesn't matter what capabilities we have, we are a competition to them, man. And that's why once you make it to the quarterfinal stage, however we do it, we rely on other teams to lose, or it's always controversial the way we move up the ranks on any Champions Trophy, whether it be World Cup. We make it. Once you're there, they get stronger and stronger. So it always comes down to how we deal with pressure. And if we're winning, we take the momentum into semifinals, final, and it's usually a win for us, especially in England, right? We always perform well there. I think the way we respond to this short term is go all out, man. T20, just perform. And I think they need to shift their anger towards performance. That's the only short-term solution we have at the time. And then we can, regather and come up with a strategy and how to deal with situations like that in the future. But I do agree, I don't see Pakistan hosting a team with such caliber, the big three, in anytime soon. Not this year or next year.
Yeah, I don't mean to suggest that Pakistan doesn't have a chance winning the World Cup. Absolutely, I think they do.
Yeah.
I think they are a very good T20 side. I don't think they're a very good 50 over side or a test side, but I do think Pakistan is a very good T20 side, and the world recognizes that. My concern was simply what I was trying to state is that, leading up, if you do get to play New Zealand and England, you might prepare a little bit better to face them again in the World Cup, when it matters a lot. So it could have been a nice thing to have. So I think, a little exposure, a little, get to know the players a little bit, having been on the field with them. It's a bit of an advantage if you've had a recent game with them. So Pakistan won't have that, but that does not mean at all that Pakistan won't do well. I think they have a very good chance, and they should not be written off at all. You shared something about the team now having to play and just taking all of this energy and turning it into something positive and using games as an outlet to show the world what they're about.
Right.
I agree with that. And I think Ramiz Raja, the PCB chairman, also stated that it's just that also adds a bit of pressure, right? So now you have a team that has several inexperienced players.
Yeah.
They have just dealt with this ridiculous situation, which is completely unfair. And now they also have uncertainty about what future games are coming. They know a World Cup is coming. They know the whole nation wants them to really win and prove a point.
Right.
So I wonder how that's going to affect them. I know our players in the past have not done very well under pressure, and it's a concern. I really don't care if they win or not. I think the best thing they can do is, like you're saying, do the best they can and give a good fight wherever they play, whoever they play. And I think that's what matters. And in the short term, when you're thinking about Pakistan cricket, somebody came up with this idea: Pakistan should right away organize local tournaments, like put teams together, get our, like one of those Pakistan Cup or one of those PSL tournaments, like a mini version of a PSL. They should put that together and launch it so that all the guys get some competitive cricket going on and people in Pakistan still get to watch some cricket. And I thought that was a very good idea.
That is a great idea.
Let's transition our conversation to Ramiz Raja then. We wanted to talk about him a little bit, and how do you think he's doing as a chairman?
Too early to say, but his press conference after he was voted in was very impressive.
Voted in, right? In quotes.
Yeah, there's a process, man. You still got to go through the process for the paper, and that's exactly what happened that day. He thanked all the members and committee for selecting him, but it was very Imran Khan like, and he talked about issues that we always brought up and we were concerned about. He talked about the women's cricket, right? He talked about the supporting staff in PCB and how important they were. He issued raises for many of the staff members. That was long due. He talked about first class cricket. He talked about club level cricket and how to improve that. And he wasn't looking for an overnight solution. That's very comforting to know. He knows it's going to take time. And he also quickly dismissed that he's there for his performance or to prove any heads that he's capable. He genuinely just wanted to make change in Pakistan cricket. So far on the book, on the surface, everything looks good. Time will tell. Everything's not going to be checked off. Obviously, it takes a while. And knowing PCB, we don't even know if Ramiz is going to stay another year or two. He could always be replaced. So all the work that he's putting in could be wiped off. And Pakistan has tendency to move backwards instead of taking what's been done and working with what the other, the previous chairman, the work they've put in, and continue on those efforts. They want to do what they did 10 years ago because they thought that was the right approach. And so I really hope he sticks around for at least 4 or 5 years to make the change that he promised in his press conference, at least.
Yeah, I think his contract is 3 years, and I think every 3 years there's supposed to be a vote again. He could earn a second, I guess. He could have a second run if the voting goes the way it's supposed to go. I mean, the voting is kind of a funny thing because I think a lot of people were really wondering, like, how did he get voted in? Is it a real vote if he already met with the prime minister and the prime minister already said that he's going to be the one? So, there's a bit of like, you speak of the process, but we also have a reputation of constantly ducking and dodging certain steps in the process. And it sounds like this was one of those situations. I do like it, though. I mean, I do think he's a good fit. I like Ramiz Raja. He's grown on me. I didn't always like him on the field. I didn't like him as much, but I didn't watch him enough. Only in the early 90s, I got to see him a little bit. I didn't see him before that. But obviously, he's very accomplished as a cricketer. And I think it's important for the chairman of the cricket board to be a cricketer. Typically, the reason why I think we haven't had a lot of cricketers to be taking that seat is because our cricketers are never a full package. You have somebody who's a really good striker of the ball and they become a superstar like Shahid Afridi, or they bowl really well, or they're a good all-rounder like Razak, and they become a superstar like that. But then they can't speak in front of people or something. or they're missing some leadership qualities that make people angry. Like Yunus Khan apparently had a whole team that didn't want him to be the captain, even though Yunus Khan was a superstar, a great batsman, and really, really, really strong. A captain too. He did well as a captain. So we always, I feel like, end up with people who check off 2 items on the list, but they are missing 3 important items, or they check off 4 items and they're missing the 1 big item that they should have, like a big quality that they should have. Ramiz, on the other hand, is one that I feel, he's been a commentator, so he has no problem speaking and articulating himself clearly and adequately and professionally and very intelligently at that. He has great cricket knowledge. He's one of the students of the game. When he speaks, I often learn a lot about cricket from him when he's speaking. So he has great depth of knowledge. He is a great public speaker. He appears to be very professional. He doesn't have any scandals that we know of yet, right? We don't know if he's like Abdul Razak got caught making rude remarks about a woman cricketer on a TV show that was a cause of embarrassment. Ramiz hasn't done things like that. And he has been on camera longer than any of the other guys. But having done all of that, he also does have administrative experience. He knows how to run an organization, which is the main thing and the main reason why before him, not many cricketers got this position. Because even if they had cricketing knowledge and whatnot, they came from the system, they didn't know how to run an organization. And that's a whole different skill set. And I think Ramiz has that. He has a clear understanding of how to have a vision, how to articulate it, and then how to break it down into small chunks and benchmarks that you slowly achieve in service of a bigger goal down the line. And I got all of those things out of his first press conference, and that's why I feel pretty excited about him.
Yeah, so we've had businessmen, right, through connections to run PCB and become chairman, but they didn't have the experience, right?
Exactly.
They didn't work through all the schools of thought, and there were different regimes, really, depending on who the captain was, what the government was, and Ramiz Raja has been through all of that, and he worked under the greatest himself, right, Imran Khan, and he highly speaks of him, and that's what I saw, a reflection of Imran Khan when he was talking. It was a total all-round package with all the boxes checked, and that was really nice to hear. And he comes on the camera. He responded to the New Zealand controversy. Usually, it would be, "Oh, we've took notice," and that's it, and nothing happens after that. That was such a politician statement, that connection of a political figure who was appointed as a chairman would say.
Yeah,
and
no,
you would not hear about any results.
No other chairman would have had the guts to come on camera right after, within 24 hours, and speak to the people in the country.
Exactly.
So yeah, that was pretty cool. I'm very impressed with him. But what a first day on the job, huh? Or the second day on the job. You walk in and your first assignment is a series that fell through. What the heck?
Hold on. You're talking about Ramiz or us?
Ramiz. Yeah, us too.
We had a hefty, heavy, agenda here, man, and it didn't. we were gonna we're gonna make it light and entertaining.
Oh my goodness.
This is controversial, man. How we started.
Yeah, this is crazy. This is but it's great because this is an important event, and I think it needs people's attention. I think I'm glad that we got a chance to kick off our first episode this way to talk about it.
Couldn't have been ignored, man. This is a podcast for cricket focused on Pakistan, and it's just appropriate. That's the current event, and it's a controversial decision by New Zealand that had to be addressed.
Yeah, at the beginning in the intro, you said something about an elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not sure if we really got to the elephant part, because we breached a little bit of the surface of, what would have happened if an incident like this occurred in New Zealand or somewhere else. But there seems to be a history of this,
Yeah.
that teams that are dark skinned, darker tones, they seem to not get the same respect as teams that are lighter skinned or
I
white.
know where you're trying to get. So let's discuss. What are your thoughts about other cricketing nations responding to this event?
Did anybody respond? What do you, did you see anything?
So the big three, right? Which is, I don't want to call them big three, but that's what they are, right? Australia,
Yeah.
England, and India.
Hmm.
I couldn't find anything or any ex cricketer saying anything towards what happened, right? If there's a big event and you're involved in cricket, doesn't matter if you're a cricketer, commentator, staff supporter, whatever it may be, don't you have questions about what happened? I mean, I get it. You may not want to take sides of any teams, but aren't you concerned? Don't you want to, like, otherwise you're on social network 24/7
Right.
talking about random stuff, right? Criticizing random people. Is there anybody other than I saw John T. Rhodes. He backed up Pakistan. He said it's the safest country he's been into. Herschel Gibbs did make a remark against New Zealand. Chris Gale, the universe boss, my man, he is actually going to Pakistan tomorrow just to prove how safe it is.
He's the
Uh,
best.
so all these countries that usually support Pakistan did speak up. So going back to your, reasoning, what is going on? We can't dismiss all of the countries, right? That are white majority or whatever. But I just want a simple question. Just ask for an explanation what happened, right? Show some concern, and I didn't see any of that in favor of Pakistan or in favor of this event itself, which is concerning to me.
Yeah, I feel individuals spoke, but even ICC should say something,
Right.
right? It's individuals sharing their support is one thing, which is nice, and a lot of individuals have relationships with other individual players, and obviously they want to show their support, and that's very nice of them.
Yeah, I'm not even asking for support. I'm just asking for concern. It's not just related to Pakistan, New Zealand. This happened. It's a cricket event, man, and a big one, and especially the high profile of this series. Cricket is coming back to Pakistan after what, 12 years, and you're not concerned about what happened. It's just mind-boggling to me.
Well, I think there's a pattern of just mistreating certain teams, and I think that needs to be pointed out, and I think that's a hard conversation to have. And people in cricket, people who watch and enjoy cricket, obviously there's a fraternity there, and there's no denying it, but we also have to reflect and figure out what's going on. Are there any implicit biases that are at play here, where certain countries don't get the benefit of their doubt while other countries do, and certain things are expected of countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh and West Indies that not everyone else would have to do. Like, you know, as we've said before, Pakistan went to Sri Lanka when Sri Lanka had the Tamil Tigers. There was a whole lot of stuff going on, I believe, in the one of the World Cups. Was it 96 or 99? I'm not sure, but there was some turmoil, and
Yeah.
Pakistan went there as
26.
as a gesture.
Australia pulled out. They didn't play their match,
Right.
but Pakistan did. Yeah.
So Pakistan did, and you know, similarly, like Zimbabwe has had situations, and the smaller teams, the darker teams, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I feel like
Third
it
world
has to be
countries. Yeah.
stated. They seem to not get the same treatment, and that's to me the biggest failing of ICC.
Yeah.
There is no equity amongst the teams in this
Respect.
organization.
It's money, man. If Pakistan becomes, there's an economic boom apparently that's coming to Pakistan. When that happens, if it does happen, things are going to change. Money talks, and that's what happened to India. They were mistreated 20 years ago, and that's not the case anymore. And in fact, anything tied to IPL and any players or ex cricketers tied to IPLs don't speak in favor of Pakistan. And I don't think they don't want to. They just know they're going to lose their contracts. And it's controversial, but it's true. Anybody who gets involved with IPL usually does not speak in favor of certain things. And
Well,
that's what I've seen historically in past 10 years when the IPL started.
what do you think about this situation with IPL? I feel like, every time, well, not every time, but at least twice now, Pakistan has had to face teams that were second strength teams because the main players were getting ready for the IPL or going to the IPL. And Team New Zealand that was coming down, that did come down, was missing two or three key players. Like Bolt wasn't there because they were again signed up for IPL. Like, should that be allowed?
No, man, I thought ICC events were priority.
They're clearly
Everything else
not.
was everything else was secondary, and there should be a law written about it. I mean, if you either support your country or you're not part of the immediate squad, you can always quit from international cricket and make money on the side. But the fact that ICC supports that and there's no consequences of that is very concerning. I know there were some clauses initially when IPL started because, as we discussed, no, not everybody backed up IPL. It was a third world country at the time starting a big tournament that was very successful. Once it became successful, there were new laws that were fabricated around it, and which is not cool. We should have our country and ICC events should be first priority. Otherwise, there's no need for ICC to be regulating cricket to begin with.
Yeah, that's my main concern too. I feel like the quality of cricket goes down if you are always sending your best to IPL. Obviously, that tournament gets great, then it becomes good and fun to watch. But all these other series that people do want to watch because they're happening in the countries where people want to go and see the games, their superstars are not there. And to me, that's not good. That's not good enough. I mean, we got to do a better job of regulating a little bit of that, or at least figure out the schedule so that series don't overlap each other. I mean, it doesn't make any sense that um, there's cricket going on while a big giant event like the IPL is going on. Like, if IPL has gotten so big that we can't really mess with it and that we need to leave it alone and let it happen, then we should clear the space on the calendars so that IPL can happen and all the superstars want to go and do, make a lot of money there and entertain people at the same time. They can go and do that while local cricket is going on in most other countries or some other side tournament is going on.
Even if it overlaps with a series, that's not and the IPL, right? There's not all the countries are playing at the same time. It's not World Cup or Champions Trophy.
Right.
Like New Zealand, Pakistan players show up for this series, and IPL is pretty long, 2.5 months, and appear when you're done. And when you were contracted, there should be some type of scheduling that should be forwarded to IPL. Okay, well, we'll sign the contract, but we're not available for this many days because of this series. It's not going to happen every year. You're just going to
Yeah.
miss out, and they have enough players, man. They select 20 players for each local team who can cover, and we're not talking a big ICC events going on where all the players will be missing and it's overlapping with IPL schedule. It's just a couple of players. It's okay, and some are gonna come in and some are gonna leave because there's another series with other country. So it's a simple fix, really.
Yeah. Well, apparently the New Zealand players that are in India now playing or getting ready to play their games in the IPL, they seem to be considered very safe, even though it's not that far away. So, well, hopefully everything goes well over there too. But it's just feels crappy that.
No great threat. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just hopeful that there's some cricket that happens in Pakistan in the next coming weeks, so that we can still get to see some of our stars perform.
Yeah. We're just gonna have to stand behind Pakistan cricket. This is the time that we have to not criticize what's going on, but support, regardless of how much you disagree with it.
And that's right, folks. On that note, then we're going to end our episode for today. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Please feel free to share your comments, thoughts, questions with us. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Crickolectuals. Have a good one.